Hi, my name's Annie, and I'll be your multiversal librarian for the day. Today I would like to explore the story of a planeswalker, an old walker, but not just any old walker. I'd like to explore the story of my predecessor, Commodore Guff. Commodore Guff is a planeswalker librarian inhabiting an infinite library, one which contains every book ever written, and one of his defining characteristics that the old Commodore has read them all. Guff was originally introduced in the invasion cycle of novels from the early 2000s as a part of the Nine Titans, a ragtag group of planeswalkers assembled by Urza Planeswalker to destroy Phyrexia. Guff is easily the most standout among the Titans, both for better and for worse. He is most known in the Magic fandom for rewriting the very books he's in. Having read every book ever written, Commodore Guff has naturally read the invasion cycle, which leads to some pretty hilarious antics on his part. Guff is the only character I've ever seen in a piece of fantasy literature to literally have to sign an NDA as to not spoil the entire thing halfway through. I'm not exaggerating, this is quite literally what happens. One of Guff's greatest acts of heroism is also that he actually rewrites the invasion novels as they're being written to give good a chance against evil. Guff quite literally rewrites history. Breaking the fourth wall is not just something Guff does for comedic relief, it is quite literally his superpower. In spite of this, he is a character which I find very difficult to hate. Whilst he often engages in some pretty preposterous shenanigans, he has both the personality and the grace to pull it off. He is funny, memorable, and in the end shows that his heart is in the right place. Join me as I explore the way in which Guff can be one of the most inept plot devices I have ever seen in a piece of literature, and simultaneously be one of the most endearing, lovable characters of the invasion cycle. My first reason for liking Guff as much as I do is kind of an unfortunate one. This may be a hot take among Magic's Vorthos, but Invasion is not a great novel cycle. I have read the entire story twice now, and to quote Hipsters of the Coast, this should have been an easy story to tell. We have the charming and quirky crew of Weatherlight, a flying skyship which Urza Planeswalker created specifically to fight Phyrexians. The crew, also created with this intent, will be doing just that. The Nine Titans are also a very interesting bunch. We have a group of gods setting out on an epic quest to battle a planet. Urza Planeswalker has assembled the Nine Titans to fight against Phyrexia, against which he has sworn vengeance thousands of years ago because they killed his brother. It's an admittedly epic tale. Both of these groups are facing off against Magic's greatest villain, one who has been set up in one of the better pieces of the game's canon, Yawgmoth. Yawgmoth is evil personified. He is a eugenicist turned god who has been growing his armies for 9,000 years. He is someone whose invasion of Dominaria people have been waiting for 10 real-life years at this point. Not me specifically, I'm a baby so I wasn't born yet, but I have read 14 books leading up to this very invasion, and so I can say that the excitement was definitely there. And so was the disappointment. My main issue with Invasion is that with the Nine Titans, as well as the crew of Weatherlight, we already have at least 16 characters we have investment in. From the fickle Urza to the self-centered Freyalise, from the honorable Tengar to the clueless Squee, these are all fascinating characters whom I'd love to see take their part in the story and develop in meaningful ways. Which is why it frustrates me how many other characters are taking up space in these novels with their, frankly, tedious stories. Eladamri and Lansivia are characters whom I love in the Nemesis novel, and who have quite a bit of chemistry together, but who ultimately contribute very little to the namesake invasion of the trilogy. They obviously do fight in it, but so does literally everyone else on Dominaria. It doesn't really make them special. Similarly, the Metathran soldiers Agnate and Thaddeus are extremely interesting characters. These are the leaders of a slave race which Urza Planeswalker bioengineered to fight Phyrexians. There is a lot of opportunity here to explore the idea of these soldiers realizing their own identity and place in the world, maybe even rebelling, but they are mostly there just to fill in space with endless fight scenes against the Phyrexians. They even have the realization that them and the Phyrexians aren't that different, both being synthetic forms of life only made to fight and suffer, but they simply accept it pretty much instantly. It never goes beyond their own heads, and as such never really has much impact on the plot. Things aren't looking better on the Phyrexian side of things either. As I've said, Yawgmoth is a character I was extremely excited to see in action. For 9,000 years we have heard word of this dark god who would come and take over Dominaria by any means necessary. I don't get why it was necessary to introduce 2 other villains to take up space which Yawgmoth could have easily filled out. Sabo Tavok is mostly a punching bag for the Weatherlight crew. She relishes in suffering. She commands the Phyrexian armies at Benalia and Koilos. And that is pretty much all there is to her character. Evankar Krovax, on the other hand, is a serious letdown. I love the Nemesis novel in which he is introduced as a Phyrexian so much I even got it in paper. Fun fact about me, there are 2 books in which a guy loses his virginity to a Phyrexian, and I own both of them as physical copies. Isn't that great? Krovax is a Phyrexian demon who has extracted the lives of thousands of people to claim their power as his own. He is an almost indestructible force in Nemesis. Unfortunately, here he just gets some oddly satisfying slime poured on him, gets beaten up by Gerard Capuchin, and into the Shadow Realm he goes. To be fair, all of these characters are somewhat necessary because of King's decision to capture the Phyrexian invasion of Dominaria in its entirety. We go from place to place, from Benalia to Yavimaya to Tal'Run to Tolaria, and in each of these places we see the battle between the Phyrexians and the many nations of Dominaria. And whilst it's an admittedly grand, cinematic, and rather ambitious approach, I don't think it's done particularly well. A part of the reason why I think this is that King was not given the adequate time to plan out something like this big. All of these novels were pretty much published within a year, and I have a hard time believing that King had the adequate time to prepare, given that he was already writing The Thran and Time Streams, and I'm sure I'm missing something else that he wrote also in the years prior. Basically, he was trying to make Lord of the Rings in a year, with a cinematic universe based on a card game, and it kind of looks like it, unfortunately. But even in all this chaos, one can find the occasional diamond in the rough. Or in this case, a diamond in the Guff. As I've said already, Guff is easily the most standout of the 9 titans. None of them are poorly written per se, but a lot of them are just sort of self-serious and sort of like, oh, we're gonna save the world, we're the strongest, you know. Are you the greatest because you're Urza Planeswalker, or you're Urza Planeswalker because you're the greatest? Neither. Urza Planeswalker sucks. But a lot of them are just kind of these very self-serious types, and whilst there isn't anything necessarily wrong with that, I feel if you're 1,000 or several thousands of years old, omnipotent being, you gotta put some style into it, you know? If I had their powers, I'd go to Ben Shapiro's bedside table, leave Estrogen there, and lurk in his walls to watch the outcome. Why doesn't Freyalise do this? I don't know. This is especially odd given that we are in an era of Magic's lore where Planeswalkers are said to be notoriously mentally unstable. We are talking about the same story where Urza encounters Manatarka, a Planeswalker who presents as a frickin' gazebo, where all of these Planeswalkers just like dudes with powers. Guff is not mentally unstable either. He simply doesn't care about the world outside of his books very much, which gives him all sorts of unintentional quirks and behaviors, which ironically make him very interesting to that world.
I've lost a cannon!
Commodore Guff broke in.
Blast!
As if in answer, a bolt leapt suddenly across his frame. cutting 50 feet into the rock where he stood.
Nope. There it is.
Possibly as a result of his incomprehensible literary knowledge, Guff also has a fascinatingly large vocabulary, using expressions I have never heard before and might very well never hear after reading Invasion.
Wall be jiggered. By Bellanus. Bust me bullocks. Quite right there, old Tom.
Keep in mind that all of these expressions are being used while Guff is in, like, the magic equivalent of hell. Like, a lot of these are being said while he's fighting some of the most unimaginable monstrosities in the entire game. Another surprisingly consistent through line which adds some personality to Guff's character is his monocle. Or perhaps a lack thereof. In spite of the fact that he is an almost omnipotent, godly being who should be able to conjure one out of thin air at any given point in time, the novels make it a point to describe several times the Commodore drops, forgets about, or otherwise loses his monocle. One of the vacant Titan engines powered up. A bluster of thoughts intruded on the conversation.
Can't believe we have to muck about in pipes and sepsis, beautifying our hands and burning our beards and scratching my monocle! How in hell did that damn creeper scratch my best monocle?
Considering how many plot holes and inconsistencies there are in this trilogy, it's kind of amazing how thoroughly the books stick to this one particular mannerism. One of my favorite moments is the contrast between Commodore Guff and his ever so slightly more serious friend, Bolivar.
Look, you're the one who hates machines, and one of the ones who hates Urza. Better to trust your own magic, your own innate abilities, than these knife collections. Do as we all did on the third sphere. Conjure war robes and protections for yourself. It'll take more energy, more concentration, yes, but it'll be safer. Let foliage and green mana wreathe you.
Let a smile be your umbrella,
advised Commodore Guff, suddenly standing outside his Titan engine, his feet set on the ground amid live wires. A spastic dance followed. The old planeswalker leapt with sparking energy. As he danced, a thick white coating oozed out to encase his skin. In moments, he was protected. His monocle had grown large enough to front his whole face, like a diver's mask. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Bolivar, by the way. He is easily the second funniest of the 9 Titans. He is a former pirate / ship captain whom has ascended to planeswalkerhood and has been using it to smuggle tobacco across planes in the multiverse. This is extremely fascinating, considering that, once again, this is pretty much a god. Any tobacco he wants, he can pretty much just take. He doesn't eat, he doesn't need money. Like, what does he smuggle the tobacco for? I'm assuming it's the love of the sport, which I honestly love. Like, half the planeswalkers that I read about are all like, I'm immortal now. What am I gonna do? Some kind of scheme that either saves the world or ends it. Bolivar just found himself a hobby. Like, it's beautiful. Similarly to the reasons for both piracy, the question might arise, why does Commodore Guff own an infinite library? One does not simply become the greatest book nerd in the multiverse for nothing. And don't you worry, there is a reason for this. And actually surprisingly wholesome. Scott McGuff is an author from the greater Seattle area. He has written 13 magic novels, 6 anthologies, and has been the creative director of magic from the year 1998 up until the year 2000. But the reason I'm telling you this is that he is also the reason why Commodore Guff exists. Thanks go also to Scott McGuff, the magic continuity editor. He is both a fierce defender of Dominaria and a welcoming host who makes the world truly shared. J. Robert King. Commodore Guff has been based directly off McGuff as a sort of tribute by King. It is a part of the reason why I find Guff to be so endearing. He has a feeling of camp about him that no other of the 9 Titans really has. Even if I hated the way Guff was written, I could at least acknowledge it as a way to pay respect and have a good time between colleagues. It is also a kind of fun mental exercise, reading about Guff's mannerisms and wondering how accurate they are to the real-life Scott McGuff. It is also the only way to explain some of Guff's behavior. How about the legal material, and the dedication and acknowledgements? After all, who gives a goat's droppings for the editor of an epic? Commodore Guff hurled those pages aside and saw them catch fire. He threw out the teaser too. It had given away the destruction of Dominaria anyway, something that was completely undecided at this point. Commodore Guff turned his face from the ravaged book in his hand and looked skyward.
This would have never happened when I was in charge of continuity.
Tears rolled from the Commodore's eyes as he wished for an editor who could save the world. I like to imagine this as a representation of what was actually going on between King and McGuff, with the novels being written on a time crunch and King and McGuff literally having the Commodore's experience trying to piece this trilogy together. Even if it's not specifically about these two in this case, someone was clearly projecting onto their characters here. You cannot convince me otherwise. The creative decision to base Guff off of a real-life writer also explains why his fighting style is just hilariously unique. Guff is a cartoon character in a fantasy world. There is literally no other way I could think of to describe his fighting style. In their original plan to destroy Phyrexia, the 9 Titans were going to blow up the entire place with bombs that they set up. Unfortunately, Urza was being Urza, and he, after thousands of years of fighting against Yawgmoth, was like, hey, Phyrexia is pretty cool, I'm joining Yawgmoth, y'all deal with it. And so the 9, now more like 4 Titans, are left to destroy Phyrexia all on their own, fighting Phyrexians face to face. Now, even though I think the characters of the 9 Titans are generally somewhat undercooked, I think their designs and their style is genuinely quite interesting. I think it's a shame that there weren't toys of these made at the time. You have Freyalise with her Titan suit, enhanced with the power of nature. You have Lord Windgrace in his titanic panther form. And there's Guff.
He skipped across the sky like a maiden across a field. That's not going in.
He skipped across the sky like a maiden across a field. Where she would reach into a basket of flowers and fling them gladly in her wake, the Commodore instead reached into another book, a dull, and overwritten, and worthless book, and yanked out pages by the handful. He hurled the crumpled sheets down in rattling flurries within the gun embrasures, the streets, the windows. His propaganda leaflets were, in a word, haphazard. They were also lethal. Creatures angrily snatched those pages from the air and peered down at the writing there. Those who glimpsed a single word fell asleep. Those who glimpsed more died on the spot. It truly was a horrid book. And like all such books, its pages were endless. Isn't he just delightful? This is a battle deciding the fate of all of the people in Dominaria, deciding if billions are going to live their lives freely or be mere flesh puppets for Yawgmoth. And Guff's doing this shit. Guff also engages in behavior which I can't picture working in anything other than a children's cartoon, yet he somehow makes it work on the first sphere of Phyrexia. It does boggle the mind a bit. As I read this next paragraph, try and picture it in your head, and try and picture it in anything other than a Tom and Jerry cartoon style. Commodore Guff shoved the big book into an impossibly small waistcoat pocket, where the tome vanished utterly.
It's been a rum go. Let's close this chapter.
He pushed his hand deeper into the pocket, up to the elbow, and then to the shoulder. His head followed next, and his other shoulder. He even kicked up his legs, rammed them into the pocket, and, before his rump could tumble to the ground, popped out of existence. Somehow it only makes it funnier that this type of behavior is nowhere to be seen among any other planeswalker ever, which makes me think that Guff does it like purely out of some kind of an innate feeling of style. And speaking of style, Guff's monocle somehow still retains relevance like 3 books deep into this thing. A ray cannon bolt had leapt up from hidden embrasure, struck the upraised book in his hand, and vaporized every last, wretched word. It also had taken off the Commodore's hand at the wrist. His face flashed as red as his waistcoat, and in sheer fury he regrew the missing hand. With that new appendage, he reached up, snatched the monocle from his eye, and rolled it down at the offending gun. The little lens spun through the air, widening as it went and gaining a silver sheen. As if on invisible lines, the monocle slid down to clamp onto the muzzle of the ray cannon. It barked, hurling another beam. The light struck the mirrored disc and bounced back down the throat of the gun. The mechanism exploded, and the barrel curled like the peel of a banana. I'd once again also like to shout out Bolivar. This man literally gives a gunpowder-filled cigar to a Phyrexian and blows the thing the fuck up. It's awesome. When has Urza ever done anything like this? I'll tell you when, never. Because I read 10 novels with the guy and he's always like, oh, I'm gonna assemble a clockwork device of unseen power. And then nothing happens usually, because we've been waiting for this novel. Guff is great. And like most great things, he couldn't last forever. However, he did at least make sure to leave in a decidedly Guff-tastic way. Imagine, if you will, that you are fighting for your life. Not just that, you are fighting for the life of everyone you ever loved. And you are in fact fighting for the life of everyone, period. You are fighting in a battle which will decide the fate of the multiverse, and then your friend just tells you you're going to lose. Not just that, he also tells you he's actually known this for months now, but has simply decided not to tell you because he has signed an NDA. You have lived for thousands of years and have no idea what an NDA is. That would be crazy, right? Well,
This will not be a loss.
growled Lord Windgrace.
This is my home. I have fought this battle for centuries. I will not lose it in a day.
So saying, he dropped from the sky. Commodore Guff watched him go and clucked quietly.
Too bad.
Bolivar turned a questioning gaze on him. The Commodore blinked behind his monocle, coughed into his hand and said,
What?
What's too bad?
asked Bolivar. The Commodore pointed his finger emphatically, as if realization floated on the air, and he was trying to pop it.
Oh, yes. Too bad. Too bad that he'll be killed.
Bolivar's eyes grew wide.
He'll be killed?
Guff nodded, smiling absently.
Us too. Everybody. Everything.
What?
Cursed Bolivar and Fraley's. The Commodore seemed taken aback by their vehemence. He patted the pockets of his tunic.
Well, I'm sure that's the way I approved it.
This obviously instigates an argument between the three walkers.
You approved this.
The Commodore's confusion turned defensive.
What else? Yawgmoth's the right bastard. Who could believe that Gerard could stop him? Ever hear of suspension of disbelief, old man?
It also results in some pretty awesome banter between Commodore Guff and Bolivar.
You can't do this. You can't destroy Dominaria.
I'm not doing it.
Protested the Commodore.
The author and his characters are doing it.
A history that compels reality.
Bolivar said.
We're the characters. You have to let us decide this. For once. Just once. Trust the characters to find their own way.
I knew you would say that. It's right here.
Bolivar jabbed the Commodore's chest. Through clenched teeth, he hissed.
You start erasing from that passage forward. There's no time. You free us up to win this thing, or lose it. But lose it on our own terms. Or I'll never speak to you again.
Of course you won't. You'll be dead.
The pirate grabbed Guff's tunic.
Do it!
I don't have an eraser.
You're a planeswalker. Conjure one!
No.
Snarled the Commodore.
It's artistic integrity.
What ultimately ended up convincing Guff was not the looming threat of multiversal destruction, nor was it his best friend Bolivar's empty threats. It was what he had always cared for the most. I assume then, you remembered to move your library safely beyond the Nexus. It'd be a shame for the Dominarian apocalypse to destroy all your books. Guff silently mouthed, all my books. An enormous eraser suddenly appeared in his hand.
Good.
Bolivar said.
Start with this conversation and erase all the way to the end. Make sure you don't miss anything, and don't stop until you're through. Otherwise, all your books, every goddamn book,
He echoed, nodding feverishly.
every buggered befuckered one.
With that, the Commodore walked away from the mid-air conference. And Guff erased, with a canonical, comically large eraser. He erased. Madly, he erased. Madly, yes. For what editor erases so fervently the words an author has written? What editor allows his author to write 100,000 words only to erase 10,000 of them? Only an editor desperate to get history right.
Bother.
It's a funny thing that in spite of the card bearing both his name and resemblance, the card Guff rewrites history is actually extremely inaccurate to what happened in the novels. Guff never rewrites history. He erases it so that the characters have the opportunity, get it? To choose their own fate. He doesn't save the world. He gives others the chance to do it in his place, as he is wiped from existence shortly after. His hand paused only when he reached the fate of Yawgmoth. In the original draft, Yawgmoth had conquered all. Now, who knew? With 2 broad strokes, Commodore Guff removed the passages. Tears rolled from the Commodore's eyes as he wished for an editor who could save the world. It was his last thought. The cloud of Black Death swallowed and obliterated him. Commodore Guff is awesome. He rocks. He enters the scene beaming with personality and leaves it beaming just the same. The idea of Guff's existence in a piece of high fantasy literature is insane. The idea that a character has read the novel he's in and is now just trying his hardest not to spoil it because of some spiritual feeling of artistic integrity. He is an extremely out-of-place character among all these serious planeswalker types. And I'm so happy every time he's there. I love all of his silly mannerisms. There are moments throughout my days when I just randomly think of something Guff said. And I smile. Not just that, Guff is a noble soul. Yes, what convinced him to save the world were his books, but Guff was always passionately himself. He loved books, he loved reading, he read every single one. And in the end, he gave his life to protect them. And all of them in Aria, but you know. As of late, my videos have been ending with a lot of social messaging and thought. But today I would like to leave you with only this. Be like Guff. Be passionately yourself, because you're the only one who can. And who knows? It might inspire others around you to do the same. It might help you find the people who will love you for who you truly are. You might not literally rewrite history, but you might at least help write it. And who knows? Maybe a nerdy girl on the internet will make your hyperfixation and spend several months making a video about you. How about that? Thanks for watching.